did you get into sleep?
I became curious about it when I was an undergraduate, and I was taking psychology at the time, so I got an honors degree in psychology, and a PhD in cognitive science, and I was noticing that on Sunday evenings, often Sunday nights, find it difficult to fall asleep, and I guess I was worked up about the week or something like that. So I became curious about it, and being very interested in cognitive psychology, which is basically psychology of the human mind with a artificial intelligence and information processing approach thrown into that, neuroscience, etc. Anyway, so I was curious about this difficulty I had falling asleep, and I've always been interested in practical applications, self-help, and I had even intended to go into clinical psychology. So I was curious about, okay, how could we speed up this sleep onset process? So I developed various techniques, but yeah, they were inspired. They were not just techniques out of the blue. They were techniques that were based on some kind of, model I was developing already, but okay, what's involved in sleep onset? So that's kind of how I got interested in it. Initially, I didn't have insomnia per se, but at the very onset. But yeah, so I had that, and then it just grew from there.
So you had mentioned how you had experienced some sleep troubles, and it wasn't insomnia per se, but it was.
I wouldn't call it insomnia at all as an undergraduate. It was just normal. People sometimes have difficulty falling asleep, right? So there's a clinical definition of insomnia, but I did meet that definition in, I don't know, let's say 2004 or something like that. I was going through a very stressful time, and I kind of didn't rely on the techniques that I had, because I had slept fine for years at that point, but then I got hit by a wall of stress and various things, and I had difficulty falling asleep. So, and at that point, I actually went to see a doctor about it, and he said, "Oh, try these meds," which were not that helpful, because medication doesn't necessarily put you to sleep, and it can really make you groggy the next day. And I'm a knowledge worker, so that doesn't quite work. So that compounded the stress. So yeah, I actually had insomnia, severe insomnia, for a while in that period, and then that went away, and a few years later, it came back, but this time I thought, no, I'm not trying these medications. I'm going to use what I understand of sleep onset and psychology to basically deal with this. So basically, I threw a brick of psychology at the problem, and things were they resolved themselves. I was quite happy, and I as I said, I was developing a model of what I came to call a sleep onset control system at the
Right.
time, to drive this theory. So that actually led to a research program. So I decided what I do basically in my life is I take things that interest me and I turn them into productive problems. So there's got to be productive for me. It's just the way I live my life. And so I decided to turn it into a research project, and an established researcher friend of mine suggested that we run an experiment, that I write a paper, and that we basically take it from there, which we did. And that was about 2012 or so. So I wrote the paper. We ran some studies. I developed some software even, and yeah, so it became one of the things that I'm interested in. And of course, sleep is very important for not just your well-being, but your productivity. They're interwoven.